10 a.m. item. It's our 6.3 timed item. It is a consideration of PG&E Community and Wildfire Safety Program update for Lake County. Okay, Carol.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce our representatives from PG&E, if they can just confirm for me that they are in the room, and then I'll proceed with that.
I do see Aaron.
So our representatives are Aaron Johnson, Vice President of Wildfire Strategy, Jason Reagan, Director of Wildfire Mitigation, John Stallman, Manager of Microgrid Strategy, and then also on hand are Donovan Lee, our Safety Strategy Specialist, and Melinda Rivera, our Local Public Affairs Representative. And I want to check in and ask folks, how do you want to do this? I believe Melinda is going to share her screen at some point. So do you want to stay on camera for the start of it, Aaron, or how would you like to do it?
Sure, whatever makes the most sense. Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. What we were hoping to do is have Melinda be able to share her screen to share the presentation, and then partway through the presentation, because we know that there was a lot of interest in the microgrids and the temporary generation, that Jason Reagan be allowed to share his screen and was going to give you sort of a county overview of the infrastructure through our GIS system and sort of walk through each individual project. So that's what we'd like to be able to do. So some screen sharing with Jason Reagan and Melinda, if that's a possibility, that would be ideal.
Yes.
That's great. So Melinda, I believe Jake has given you the power to share your screen. We're ready.
And I do want to acknowledge Reno Franklin also is on the phone. He's the tribal liaison. I see his name there also.
Thank you, Supervisor Simon. Reno Franklin is on as well. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Board of Supervisors and the County Administrator for Lake County. Thank you so much for inviting us this morning to present to you. Can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Melinda Rivera, and I am here as the Local Public Affairs Representative for PG&E for Lake County. This morning, I'm here to introduce PG&E leadership and subject matter experts who will provide a brief update on PG&E's Community Wildfire Safety Program in Lake County. We will have presenting this morning Aaron Johnson, the PG&E Vice President of Wildfire Safety, Jason Reagan, who is PG&E's Director of Public Safety Power Shutdown Mitigation Strategies, and John Stallman, who is our PG&E Manager for Microgrid Strategy. I will now advance the slides.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for having us. This is Aaron Johnson. It's good to be back with you. I know I was in front of the Resilience Committee earlier this year and gave a preview of some of the work that we were planning to do this year to improve the public safety power shutoff program. Obviously, we are moving into the fall here, and this is, auspicious day, September 1st. So beginning really of the period where we really start watching for potential public safety power shutoffs. So I'm here to update you on the work that we've done locally, and especially with a strong focus today on the local microgrids, of which we have exchanged some written correspondence about the status of those over the last several months. So as we indicated in our last letter, we think the best way to help understand these projects is to have this walkthrough that Jason Reagan and John Stallman, who are leaders in that organization for us and are in fact leading those efforts, to really walk you through how those projects will work in Lake County. So that will be the bulk of our presentation. I'll give some preliminary remarks here, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion. Just as a reminder for us, the organizing principle this year is really that these events, if necessary, need to be smaller, they need to be shorter, and they've got to be smarter. So a little bit about what that means. We've set an internal goal to reduce the size of events by 1/3 over last year so that we can really target the areas that are more likely to experience a PSPS. So we made a number of technical improvements, including the microgrids that you're going to hear about today for the grid to make sure that we can make the footprint smaller. They've got to be shorter. The duration was simply, there's no other way to put it other than unacceptable last year in terms of the duration that some customers experienced of outage. So we've almost doubled our helicopter fleet and really improved our resource allocation process to make sure that we'll have enough folks available to try and cut the inspection time after a public safety power shutoff event in half. Our goal is 12 hours of daylight this year to make sure that we can restore power to customers. And then finally, smarter for customers, and that really means two things. In my mind, it means in our planning processes, and it really means making sure that our information flow is much better to agency partners and to customers, and also then that we are supporting communities more than we did last year. And that means improved things like community resource centers and some partnerships with some community-based organizations that we are helping to fund to be able to provide more support to our most vulnerable customers. I know we've given overviews of a lot of these programs in the past, and so we'll be happy to answer questions about specific elements. There's a fair number of slides in the appendix that I think Melinda has sent over and has been distributed, and we're happy to cover any of those, but I really wanted to make sure today that we focused on the microgrid item. We're going to cover a couple of other things quickly, but we're happy to take questions as we move through the presentation on this, on many of those other items, as there is interest and time. So I wanted to give you a snapshot of how we've done from a progress standpoint in terms of where we are. First, community resource centers. We have the 3 sites ready to go at this time. We're going to show you a map of that in a second, so we'll get into that one in more detail. We're looking to install 15 sectionalizing devices. The work is complete and all commissioned. Those devices are operating today and are in our system. They will help with reliability as well as help us narrow the portions of the grid that might be affected by a public safety power shutoff. We are making substantial progress on 9 different either substation generation or microgrid projects, and we're going to go through each of those in a little bit of detail here in a moment. System hardening, we're pursuing 8 miles of line in the county, 5 are complete to date. We're targeting 103 miles of vegetation. We're about 80% complete with that work. That is an end of year goal, like the hardening goal for us. We've installed 7 new weather stations. You'll know that Lake County was a big area of focus for us over the last year and a half. And so many have been installed already. We set that goal about a month and ahead in advance. So we continue to install weather stations and cameras to the extent that there is spots are identified. So we continue to welcome feedback on additional ways we can build out the weather station and camera network in Lake County. Just as a reminder, next slide, Melinda, please. The infrastructure in the county, we have about 1,100, almost 1,200 miles of distribution line. About 60% of it is in that so-called high fire threat district, the elevated and extreme fire risk areas, also called Tier 2 and Tier 3, and about 200 miles of transmission line, about 90% of which is located in these high fire threat areas. We serve 3,800 customers in Lake County, 2,200 of whom are in our medical baseline program and about 300 critical facilities. Just as a reminder, for us in this recounting, the number of customers served is the number of meters, really. It's not people served. Generally, that's about 3 to 1 in the ratio for general planning purposes. But so let's speak to CRCs. The goal this year obviously was to move indoor out of the tents from last year. We had really strong support across the community in Lake County for CRCs last year, and the sites that we were able to stand up, and strong local partnership and support. And we're very appreciative of that. We're trying to have that ready to go this year, as opposed to the plan that we were building on the fly last year. So as you can see, we have 3 of the indoor sites are ready, and 2, we are finishing up the negotiations on that, and look to have those activated as soon as possible. We have 6 outdoor sites that are ready as well, to complement where the potential for the need to do outdoor sites given COVID considerations. So we're going to take the lead from the county as to what you would like us to do in an event, whether we go indoor or outdoor, or perhaps a mix depending on locations. We also have a fleet of Sprinter vans available for more remote locations or as another alternative. And so we're trying to be ready for whatever COVID conditions dictate are the circumstances in community resource centers. So that plan is much more ready to go. And we're really appreciative again of the partnership this year in getting these sites ready. Recall that we are, in some instances, I know sites already have a backup generation installed, but generally if they don't, we will provide that backup generation as well as all of the services, and do minor ADA upgrades, as well as install a transfer switch to any location that wants to be a CRC. So we are investing in these sites, and hopeful that we can have long-term arrangements in place that will really keep this plan ready and stable for years to come. So with that, I'm going to move on, and certainly we'll take questions as folks have them about community resource centers, about our effort to build microgrids and provide temporary generation in Lake County. You'll see here 2 different sort of flavors. We're doing 9 different sites across the county. Some are temporary generation staged at our substations, as outlined in the letter that we sent to the Resiliency Committee. And some are temporary microgrids, where we're actually supporting a bit of a local community with, again, power during a PSPS event. Maybe only in the PG&E world is the difference between those makes sense, but we'll walk through that with the team a little bit here. So I did want to move to the next slide, and at this point really hand it off to Jason and John to walk us through the status of each of these different microgrids and where they are in development, and as well as provide you a visual overview of sort of the areas that will be served through the electric grid for each of these different microgrids. As by way of introduction, Jason Regan is for many years been the director in charge of our distribution control centers, which is really the operating arm of the distribution system across our territory. So he knows the grid about as good as anyone in all of PG&E. He has been working for the last year or so in between bouts in our EOC as the IC for COVID and other the recent fire events. He has been leading a team that has been focused on infrastructure development and projects that can help mitigate PSPS. And so he's very, very close to this work, and is, I think, the right person to be giving us this overview. He'll be supported in this discussion by John Stallman, who's one of the folks really working for us to make sure that we have microgrids and local solutions across our territory, and has been particularly focused on some of these projects in Lake County as part of his duties. So I'm going to turn it now over to Jason and John, and they'll walk us through this next section of the presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Can I get a mic check from Aaron Johnson that you can hear me okay?
You're coming through loud and clear, Jason.
Great. First and foremost, appreciate the opportunity to get in front of all of you and explain a little bit about how Pacific Gas and Electric, as your utility provider, is going to be better than we were last year and improved. And then also listen to any feedback to continue that improvement based on input from you or any of the community that you represent. I am sharing my video. I just wanted to virtually say hello, introduce myself. I'm going to turn the video off here in a minute just to save a little bandwidth, where I think most of us are working from home, and I've got a full house of kids homeschooling, and any little bandwidth helps here. So my name is Jason Regan. I've worked at Pacific Gas and Electric for about this is my 26th year. I've had the opportunity to support your community on winter storms, heat events, planned work. I started in natural gas portion of our utility and found my way leading our control centers. I was pulled out or asked to support a new role this year on an interim basis, and it's really to mitigate the need for a public safety power shutoff. And frankly, what that means is, look, turning the power off cannot be our only option, nor can it be our first one. And thankfully, with the feedback from some of you in the county and other counties and the men and women at PG&E, it's not our only option this year. And that's what John and I are going to speak a little bit about here. On this slide, as I go ahead and turn the video off, on this slide, there's really 5 substations. I have personally worked out of these substations or been to them as part of this public safety power shutoff mitigation effort, either over my career or within the last 6 months. I'm happy to say that we have 3 of the 5 substations fully ready and able to be supported. During about 2 weeks ago, the state had a grid capacity need. And in fact, Clear Lake and Hartley Sub, which we're gonna spend a lot of time in this GIS interface to really kind of show you a bit more detail than just this nice slide here. But Clear Lake and Hartley were both fully supported, up and operational. We actually went in what we call a peak shaving or load blocking condition. And what that allows is us to put this generation online without interrupting the communities you represent and support the greater good of the capacity needs across the state. It was multiple megawatts in each one of the substations. We appreciate your cooperation on this far getting to a point where we can actually do this. It's a bit of a new need that we've seen relative to state capacity needs in almost 20 years. But Lake County was instrumental with these substations in supporting a bit of megawatt relief. Now, moving forward, these 5 substations will allow us to keep customers energized and your communities energized where it's safe to do so. And we'll speak more to that when we get to the GIS portion of this presentation, which I think is probably really more informative than a few of these slides. But wanted to just briefly show on here where we sat. We have 5 substations we're targeting for addressable load. That load is, again, customers that are able to be safely energized based on event conditions. Clear Lake Sub, done, finished, completed. Hartley Sub, done, finished, completed. Canocti, we're in the process of finalizing that. The one difference between the top 2 and the last 3 is the top 2 actually have generation on site because we know these are where we're gonna have our most at-risk conditions. And frankly, where we also have prisons, hospital, OESs, other critical county infrastructure that supports societal continuity needs. Canocti, Red Bud, and Highlands have all very similar levels of that need. But what our plans are is to have them pre-engineered, ready, on site and able to be energized, but not necessarily hooked up and energized in use. What that allows us to do is if at any time the environment throws us a bit of a curveball and we have to adjust our posture, it keeps an operational period available for us to be able to pivot based on weather intelligence. So the good news here is that we've got all 5 substations tracking. Red Bud and Highlands are tracking to be done by the 15th, if not earlier. Frankly, they're already in the final stages of the playbook readiness and the on-site generation. So we expect to have those in place well before the 15th. But that's the target that we have for right now. We're going to speak to this a little bit more, so I appreciate the patience. I'd like to move into the microgrid portion of this conversation. And this is my partner, John Stallman. If we can go to the next slide. And John, can I get a mic check from you and then we can continue to move along?
I got a quick question if I could.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've got a question from the general public about the availability of these slides to the public later. Is there a chance we can attach the link to these to our website? Is that something we can do?
This is Aaron from PG&E. We're certainly happy to share the slides with you. Melinda can pass those along, and I leave it to you to how you share them with the public, but we certainly were giving them to you with every expectation that you would be able to that they would be shared.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's really good information, and I think it's going to be helpful for people to be able to see this at on their own time.
Okay, let's continue.
All right, excellent. Thank you. And good morning. This is John Stallman, and I am with a group within PG&E, as Jason and Aaron mentioned, that is focused on microgrids. My formal role here is in integrated grid planning and innovation. And our team heads up the microgrid strategy throughout our service area. I'm also heavily involved with resilience projects for communities, and so engaging a lot with community leaders and administrative entities to create resilience for critical infrastructure. So I take a big focus here in Lake County, and I've been working with a lot of you on this board and administrators. So thank you for all your help to this point. I'd like to walk through with you these several different microgrids that we're developing within your county. And the core difference between what we're doing at the substations, where we're loading generation into the substation and then energizing all of the wires that are out of the substation, or what we would call circuits or feeders. In this situation, we've identified locations where the substation is not usable and would not be usable if there was a weather event over that area. So we've created more smaller, more surgical based microgrids that connect to the wires of the distribution system. And so we would call that a mid-feeder intertie, where we're going to connect a generator directly to the distribution wires. And we do that by creating either permanent sites or partially permanent sites. And we use a special device called a pre-installed interconnection hub that allows us to quickly plug the generators into that location and then isolate a particular area, which is generally speaking the main street or downtown safe to energized portion of commercial and critical infrastructure. And so we isolate that area off, and then we turn the generation on, and we can operate that, energize just those areas that are safe to energize in virtually most weather conditions. And so we have 4 different locations that we've designed and planned for Lake County, and working with cities and county, we've been able to identify key infrastructure and core pockets of your cities that could be served by this type of technology. So first off, in Clear Lake, we have Clear Lake is served by the Highlands substation. But the Highlands substation is located in Tier 2. And so during a weather event that is over the top of the town, where we have high winds over the town, we have these 2 other microgrids planned to serve the key areas within the town. And so Clear Lake South was identified as one area that we could isolate, and that encompasses the high school, the Walmart, the community college, a couple of county facilities, a grocery store, and a couple of restaurants. And that location, we've actually negotiated the land, and we have the land now, and we're into construction. We've parked the generators on site, and that will be fully operational in September. Clear Lake North is the generation is located actually at the PG&E Service Center, where convenient for us, that's our land. So we were able to create a way to connect to the grid there, and that will power up grocery stores and banks and a health center and the police station and a fair number of residences in the core pocket of Clear Lake North. That also includes some of the medical facilities and in the area there. So we're happy that both those projects are moving along and should be completed here in September. So looking forward to those. Middletown is another one of our locations, and Middletown being at the southern end of the county, we recognize that there's a core pocket there that has underground wires, which is safe to energize. And we, happily enough, as progress would be advancing quite quickly on these, is we've now secured secured the land with our land partner, and thank you very much. For that, we had a bit of a slow go getting some land in that area, and we've been able to finalize that now. And so we're working towards a December date, and we'll do everything we can to accelerate that. But in all practicality, these construction projects do have details to them, and so we are looking at a December date for Middletown. We heard the county loud and clear on needing to address the North Shore. So we did a pretty extensive study on the North Shore, and we'll go through and take a look at that. And Lucerne provided an opportunity that would be fit for this technology. So we're moving down that path. We've done all the initial scoping, and we've been in discussions with our county partner on the land there, and we're really working right into engineering. And as soon as the land and the design is confirmed, then we can start to put a date to that location. But we've got to cross those 2 points first, and land is our biggest issue there. So we need to make sure we get to that, and then we'll identify a date for that location. And so with that said, these substations and microgrids, Jason and I would like to take you on a real fly through in Google Earth using our GIS, our Geographic Information System, and the layers that are within Google Earth. And we'll take you for a fly through so you can actually see where these areas are and what they look like. So Jason, let's go ahead and tee up our Google Earth, and we'll show where these are going to be.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up right now. I just want to confirm that you can see the my screen and the districts that I'm showing.
Yes.
Confirmed. I can see your screen.
Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, we just wanted to recognize that look at PG&E, and I've been here long enough that sometimes we talk in terms that don't resonate with counties or OESs or our cooperatives, and we recognize the districts that are being served here and represented, and we're going to try to do our best to speak to that today by flying through the various districts. I wanted to also show just quickly that the tool that we're utilizing is similar to Lake County GIS portal that you all have and utilize throughout the community. We shamelessly will utilize bits of data, KMZ files, shape files to help us better understand the community needs. So it's nothing new or groundbreaking, but it is an advancement in our capabilities. So just confirming one last time, John, you can see now the GIS PG&E overview of Lake County?
Yes, I can, Jason. I can see it.
Okay, great. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you bear with us for about maybe 10 minutes or so, maybe just a couple minutes longer, I'm gonna drive, and John's gonna speak, similar to a tour you might have in a city where you got the bus driver and the tour guide. But I wanted to respectfully also acknowledge, look, we appreciate your support during this pandemic response time. I'm the Deputy Incident Commander for PG&E's pandemic response, and also current incident commander for our wildfire response that's impacting the state of California. So our Emergency Operations Center is up and going, and we recognize and appreciate all your cooperation with the Lima November uniform fire in the surrounding areas just south of you, and our support is with you 100%. So what you see on the screen here is of course Lake County. I'm going to show quickly at a high level a couple of things that John's going to walk into. I first wanted to show just a little bit of the actual substations that we're focusing on. I'm sorry, the entire feeders, which are distribution related, that support your county. All the orange here is distribution overhead facilities that traverse across your county. And as I zoom in a little bit, you will likely see, as long as the bandwidth cooperates with me, these purple and these green lines. These are major transmission lines that I know many of you are familiar with. They are the bulk electric system that supports energy into your county, similar to major highways or roads, if I labeled those on, like 175, 281, 53, right, 29. They're the major roads. And at any time if those roads are interrupted, you have challenges in the local communities and/or getting access to those cities and neighboring communities. So I'm going to turn the roads off for a minute to get rid of a bit of the cluster. But in general, what we wanted to speak with here is that you have major transmission lines at 115,000 kV volt level and a 60 kV volt level that really surround the greater lake area and the southern portion of the various districts you represent. I'm going to turn those transmission lines off until maybe we need them if there's questions. But right now, what we wanted to focus on is what are we doing to really truly avoid interrupting customers when we can keep the power on safely without adding risk or potential life loss with catastrophic wildfire events, and what we're doing differently. So you do see the circuits. I'm going to turn those off just for a quick second and talk specifically about the new isolation devices. All of these orange dots that you see here are specific to new devices that we automated and or installed this year, strategically targeting the ability, I'm going to turn on high fire threat districts, to isolate areas where we have high fire threat conditions, meaning humidities and fuels that could lead to catastrophic wildfire impacts if a source of fire start is provided in these areas, and we recognize that our assets can pose that. So it's specifically up here more towards Hartley and the prison area. We have a few devices that we put in service that if we didn't have these in service, you would see customers impacted into this orange area. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the devices. I think it's somewhat self-explanatory. We've done good work. They're completed. Bottom line, they'll allow us to operate our grid more strategically with an emphasis on avoiding customer interruption. As a control center leader, I'm always looking for more devices and more flexibility on the grid. And these are very welcome, but they're specifically for 2020, over 600 devices were installed across our service territory to truly just avoid customer interruption. All right, so now I'm going to get back onto a little bit on the generation and the alternative power solutions that we have. These were the circuits. If these are the substations that we are targeting that we spoke to earlier about various stages and readiness. And then if I turn on these layers, and I'm going to turn off the circuits to make it clear, these polygons represent all of the available customers and assets that we could energize if safe to do so. Now, what we don't want to mislead here is that all of this area can safely be energized when we have at-risk conditions locally in the county, and they're not as a result of transmission loss. If we have a public safety power shutoff that's a result of transmission loss, which I'm going to turn back on here again one more time, these major transmission paths, but we don't have at-risk conditions in the county, then these are fully capable of being able to be supported with temporary generation solutions or microgrid solutions. When it's a localized event, we're not able to have all of this service territory energized. And I'm going to go back to what we call the high fire threat districts that we partner with the state with, and CAL FIRE and others. And you can see how the orange and the red overlays some of these polygons. And I'll just speak specifically up here to the Hartley area. This outer white band is really where all of our PG&E assets serve the customers and your representatives in the district. But this light kind of teal green area is the actually safe to energize portion that we're targeting for a public safety power shutoff mitigation need. So bottom line, what this is showing us is that this green area, if we didn't have a temporary generation solution available, we wouldn't be able to serve these customers. And we found that out last year. And so what we're doing this year is to be better that where we can serve customers safely, we're well prepared to be able to do that. Of course, it's always incident specific. Last year we had a 1 in 100 year PSPS wildfire event, and hopefully that's not the same this year. But if it is, we'll adjust and pivot and be able to serve as many customers as we can safely. With that, I'm going to pause and hand it over to John Stallman. And I think, John, we're going to start at Clear Lake, and I'm going to turn off the high fire threat districts to make it a little cleaner. And I'm going to go back and put on the substations, the circuits, and the polygons, and then I'll be prepared to turn on the microgrids or turn off whatever you'd like. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you bear with us about another 5 to 8 minutes, we'll get done with this and we'll entertain any questions you may have. So, John, go ahead.
Very good, Jason. Thank you. And just for the sake, could you turn on the high fire threat tier 2, tier 3? And let's start with Clear Lake Substation. And as Jason mentioned earlier on the status of this substation, the substation now has generation completely loaded at the substation. And what you're seeing in the pink area is essentially what we call addressable load. That's all the circuits that we could turn on through the generation at that substation. What we will end up doing is needing to probably trim those circuits based off from what's safe to energize and those tier 2, tier 3 boundaries. And what you're looking at there is the substation, and then the open space on the right-hand side of the substation is where the generators are placed today. So you can see that if you're on the road there, you can look at the generators and get a feel for what that looks like. You can see that the southern portion of Lakeport is energized by these circuits. Each one of the purple flashes that you see there are what we call different feeders, and there are several different feeders that come out of Clear Lake Substation. And so those are the addressable areas. You can see also over at Soda Bay on the right-hand side of the circuit, it passes through some tier 2. So be aware that if we only have a transmission impact and the winds are someplace else, we'll be able to operate and support Soda Bay. If the winds are at this local level and they're directly over this area, then that line passing through the tier 2 will also need to be turned off. And so Soda Bay will only be energized during transmission level events and not at a distribution level event when the winds are directly over the top. So you can kind of see where it gets trimmed off by the overlap of the pink and the orange. So let's go ahead and move up to Hartley right quick. And you focused on this, Jason, already, and highlighted how we may need to trim down the circuit is to the blue areas. We've added sectionalizing devices to do that. We heard your messages from the county loud and clear that this is an important location. So we scoped a bunch of work to be able to enable this to occur. Our goal is to continue to advance this location until we're able to support the prison or the jail and the hospital, which is just to the north of this view. And we will also are trying to advance the system, and this is a work in progress, to be able to reach the schools and a grocery store, Safeway, and some other areas to the north end of Lakeport, which is the south side of this view. So this is a work in progress. Our initial areas, we're going to be able to energize the blue. We will increase our abilities to energize as we work through several additional engineering efforts that we have in flight. So working our way around the lake over on the Lucerne side. So we've been working with the county on a piece of property to the south end of the microgrid. The blue area is the area that's feasible to be energized. So what we call that is technically feasible area. And you can see how it isolates right at the edge of the tier 2. And the area that it doesn't have any orange on it, that's the non-high fire threat area. So that's clear of fire threat. So we can energize that overhead that's in that area. So Lucerne, we're in progress. We need to tighten the bolts on our land and our engineering, and then we're poised to be moving forward on that. I believe the engineering, I received a note where engineering is complete at this point. So now we're just needing the land, and then we can move forward with construction. So Redbud Substation, we also heard from county and local jurisdictions that this area would be important for us to consider. So we focused in on the Redbud Substation. Now, taking a look at those circuits and how far they spread out into the tier 2 and tier 3, there is a relatively small area of Redbud Substation that will be able to be used. The purple area right there is what we can use when there's weather over the top of the town. But when Clear Lake Oaks is clear of that weather and it's occurring someplace else but impacting the transmission, then we should be able to energize a much larger area here. So that being said, largely the Redbud generation is going to support the Clear Lake Oaks community. So then moving to the south there, you can see several blue polygons. Those blue areas, the one to the north is what we would call Clear Lake North, and working with the local jurisdiction there, we've identified the key critical infrastructure, including the medical facilities and police station, fire station, grocery stores, and that is the feasible area that we can energize in all weather conditions. So even if the wind is over the top of the area, we'll be able to operate this microgrid, barring any unforeseen additional impacts. So you can see the Highlands substation there, and you can see where it's positioned in the tier 2. And then the orange lines are actually overhead lines. So overhead lines in tier 2 with high winds over the top of the area would mean that we cannot operate the overhead that overlaps with that tier 2. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to operate this blue polygon. So we're doing a wide array of work in that area. You can see some green lines in there, and those are underground wires. So we can operate the underground wires, and then we're working on all the overhead facilities in that area. We've created a partnership with the community college to have generation on their land. They've been a great partner. And then this small polygon to the north there, you can see the hospital. There's a county facility there. You can see the large building in the middle is the Walmart. To the south end is a grocery store. And then there's a couple of small restaurants right in that area as well to help support the local community. Moving on over, let's stop by Konocti right quick, Jason, and we'll take a look at Konocti substation. And the key emphasis here I want to recognize is the high fire threat area. We'll turn on the addressable load, which is the orange area. So you can see it touches quite a bit of space, but the two shades of orange and the one lighter one is around Mount Konocti itself. And that area is all tier 2. The red area is the tier 3. So this circuit overlaps with a high percentage of tier 2 and tier 3. And that's why we developed the strategy of staging it offsite and then having it completely pre-engineered so that we can move it on site if we have addressable load, meaning we can actually turn the generators on. If we don't have that, if the winds are directly over the area, then all of that tier 2, tier 3 would not be able to be operated. And so we want to be able to pivot with our generation strategy and put it where it's needed most and able to be used. Let's go ahead and move down to the Middletown area. And Middletown uniquely sits in this small pocket surrounded by tier 3, has a little bit of tier 2. The blue is where we can energize a little bit bigger of a pocket. If the winds are someplace else, we could energize a bit more of it. And then if you zoom in tight to the town core, you'll see a white boundary, and that infrastructure there's a big chunk of underground there, and then there's some overhead, but it's in a clear area where there's no fire risk in that area. And so we are developing the isolation to that green polygon, and then we've partnered with the local tribe there, and thank you very much. That was really excellent lean in and step forward by the tribal council to help us with some land to identify where to site the equipment. We tried at several other locations and we were unable to work out a situation that would be sufficient for the polygon. So we were able to arrive at that, and now we're back on track. So thank you very much. And that's your flyover of the Lake County area. The circuits you see on the screen are what we expect to energize if we had a transmission level impact. So Jason, do you want to follow up with anything else, or we'll take questions?
Yeah, just open it up to any questions and appreciate your patience. We just wanted to make sure we had time to get through everything. So we're here and welcome to anything that you may have, feedback, or just any inquiries. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the presentation. I think what we'll do is, if you want to leave the map up or however we're going to do this, if I can't see you, board members, if you have questions specific, just go ahead and let me know if I don't see you. But I want to thank you for the overall presentation and what we're doing. I guess the initial question I would have, best case scenario, what type of numbers are we affected by a customer count if we're able to operate? Let's just say it's a good scenario and we're able to operate all of what we have to energize in Lake County. What type of numbers are we talking? I know last year when we had it, we had about 42,000 customers, I think, that were affected. Do we have a number on what would be the improvement this year? Obviously, like I said, a best case scenario to just single grid opportunities.
Yeah, so, we get this question a lot, and I wish we had somewhat of a better answer, but we also don't want to be misleading. It's really event specific, but I hear the frankness in your voice as far as best case scenario, and it was just over 40,000 customers or so. Look, our efforts and what I'm seeing here, we're looking for at least a 50% opportunity to keep customers energized, but it's very, very hard to fully commit to that. And I'm trying to be as transparent as I can. Some of these stations have 4 circuits, and what we aim for is about 50% of that load. We try to make sure we can do so safely. So I would ask John if he's got any round numbers he'd like to share. I'm confident in saying that a majority of the customers in this county that are in this non-tier 2 and tier 3 area, anywhere where you don't see orange and red, those equate to accounts. That could be apartment buildings, large facilities, things like that. So I would be welcome to a more definite answer to see what we can do and do some math and add it up. But John, I'm thinking here, about half of what we impacted last year, if we have ideal conditions, we could commit towards trying to make sure that we can keep those customers energized. It's really hard to answer it, and I know we could be better than that, but we just, frankly, are not comfortable giving a number that without events and incidents. But I would say a majority of the customers in the tier 1, you should all be able to have confidence that PG&E as a utility is going to look to have you safely energized where we can. John, any comments on that?
No, I think you're good. And we can take a follow-up item, Jason, to get if we were able to energize all of the orange circuits on the screen, we can give you a perspective of what that number might look like. What Jason is mentioning is when we have to trim the circuits down based off from where the weather arrives, then that gets a little bit more difficult for us to actually define how many customers will be supported.
Okay.
And it really is based on the weather.
I have a few questions.
Go ahead, Supervisor Sabatier.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the update. I know as being part of the PSPS committee, we've been trying to apply pressure, however it is that we can, and still work in partnership to make these things happen. And I know that September 1st was your deadline, and it actually looks like you're doing a pretty decent job of getting there, except for a few things still a little bit behind, but at the same time, you're creating things that weren't in existence before. So I appreciate the effort of almost reaching that mark. First off, this is not related to PG&E, but I'm looking at the Community Resource Center list. I just want to say thank you to our local tribes. The majority of those on the list are coming from our local tribes, and I appreciate that. And I hope that if there's a future need, that we can look internally at the county, because we do have some spaces that are maybe underutilized that could be utilized for such. I'm thinking we have a clubhouse over, I think, in Nice or Upper Lake around there. I know we have the town hall down in Lower Lake, and those are all buildings that at this moment I don't think are being very much utilized, and especially during a PSPS, if we want to offer something for our community to have access to, that we should look at those as being a potential use by PG&E. But I do appreciate the fact that those that stepped up to offer a place have done so, and wanted to make sure and mention that. When it comes to the weather stations, I know that a lot of times those weather stations are on peaks. Do you have weather stations at your substations as well to really know what the actual wind and weather patterns look like on the ground? Because obviously the peaks are going to give you the worst case scenario, but it could be drastically different what's happening where the actual wires are.
Yeah, Supervisor, thank you for the question. Melinda, I don't know if you could share your screen and we could go to page 17 of the appendix. Just to clarify, the cameras are generally on peaks, and so that you have maximum vantage. And I know a lot of folks have been using those cameras with the recent wildfires. Wildfire.com, a great website, lots of different entities contributing to different cameras and all integrated into one system that CAL FIRE can use for operations and move those cameras as needed. So that's the cameras. Those are mostly on peaks. The weather stations themselves are more, they are generally attached to our assets. That's the easiest place for us to put them. And it gives us, we're augmenting the network that existed so that, that wasn't always right next to where our assets actually are. So as you can see, this is the, since we started installing weather stations, these are the 23 locations across the county that you're seeing on your screen where we've done, obviously 7 of those coming in this year. And that is that whole network, which we will continue to build out based on local input, feedback from especially the fire community, emergency responders, and emergency managers. And then our own weather folks are just constantly looking to augment that network as much as we can with any gaps. So they tend to be, they're up high if our assets are up high, and they're down low if our assets are down low, so that we have much better local information. So I don't know if that answers the question, or if there's particular areas where you'd like to see focus going forward. We can certainly do that. It certainly appears to me that in the Lucerne and North Lake area, we have some opportunity to continue to augment that network.
And hey, Aaron, if I could just jump in, one thing we also have is our safety infrastructure protection teams that we dispatch during these events, and they provide real-time local weather monitoring in a virtual platform that gives us on-the-hour updates, and they can be strategically staged to locations that maybe we need to have a little bit more information that doesn't have a weather station. So just another addition to our awareness model.
And I appreciate the answers, and I know from speaking with our air quality control director, Douglas Gerhardt, that we have a unique weather pattern here. We're our own air district. We don't share it with any other county, and there's a reason for that. And not knowing what the weather patterns are here locally and using outside sources to know it might not give us the appropriate findings. So having those weather stations, I think, is really important, and I appreciate you showing the map and letting us know that you are using your assets rather than just placing it on top of the peaks. I have another couple of questions. One, I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed to see that Highlands did not take the same priority as Hartley, since it does affect a hospital and other important infrastructure. But at the same time, read a little further to the right and said September 15th. I'm wondering, since it says engineering, design, purchasing, and construction, is September 15th a realistic goal that could happen? I don't understand the level of need of what construction would be or any of those other things, so that's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it absolutely is a realistic date, if not sooner. I got an update right before this for both Redbud and Highland. We actually have kind of a Highlands North, Highlands South. It's more detailed than probably you're looking for, but spoke model where we can deploy the generation to it. And again, it's just being able to be flexible. We have a pretty large service territory. We're committing a significant amount of generation here based on, frankly, good, solid feedback that's been coming from many of you and others in your OES and sheriff departments that we could be better in this Lake County, and we will be. But please rest assured, Highlands is considered a priority. It's just the way that we have the generation on site and how it's located in the generation. September 15th is solid, and we provide a weekly update if needed to kind of maybe build that confidence.
Okay. No, and like I
Jason,
said,
John Stallman here. I'd like to add too, just for clarity, that the Clear Lake South microgrid covers the hospital. So we specifically targeted the hospital and wanted to build in resilience there so that it could be operated during all weather conditions, and then not have the limitations that generation at Highlands substation would have. So I hear the need for Highlands, but just try to understand that Clear Lake North and Clear Lake South were developed specifically as a more robust type of microgrid to serve those critical facilities.
Right. And like I said, when I looked to the right and saw September 15th and you say it's a realistic goal, then I think that's a very a good time frame, and hopefully nothing happens between then and now. And even then, we're prepared for those situations to come, and hopefully that won't happen till then, or happen at all this year if we're lucky. I have two more comments. One is it's related to PSPS, and I've spoken about it a couple times in the last few weeks, and now PG&E is directly related to this program through the CPUC, and that's the SGIP. And I'm wondering if you have any words of advice on how to get people to apply for the SGIP, which is the ability to get self-generating incentives so that they can install batteries. They can install batteries whether they have solar panels or not. But I'm also being told when I go through this process that Lake County is on a special map because of having multiple PSPSs in the past, and that makes us more likely to obtain these grants from the CPUC. So just wondering if you can speak on that a little bit.
Sure. This is Aaron. I'll speak to the self-generation incentive program. So that is a statewide program that all the big utilities participate in. And that program is very focused on getting homeowners and small business batteries for resiliency planning. For community members, there's a strong focus on customers that live in the tier 2 and tier 3 areas, as well as customers who may have experienced 2 or more PSPS events, even if they don't live in those higher fire risk areas. So those customers are prioritized, as well as customers that are on our low income or CARE program. And for customers that meet both being on the low income program and or in the tier 2, tier 3 area, the subsidy pays for almost the entirety of the entire battery system. So it is a program that people should definitely be taking advantage of. One of the other areas of prioritization is for customers who are on their own well water systems and need a backup system for water pumping. That's been a big area of feedback where we've gotten, obviously if a fire were to approach or during those conditions, people want the ability to perhaps defend their own land in their own house, and a PSPS could obviously eliminate their ability to do water pumping if they don't have their own backup system. So there is a lot of information about the program. It can be a little bit complicated on the criteria, but we have some good. Obviously, you can go to pgne.com SGIP SGIP as one area, and then we can have Melinda send over some promotional material that we have for the program, and we would love to partner with you on sharing that through your various channels into the community in Lake County so that we could get as many folks as we can signed up for that program. There's about $240 million in that program, and about half of it has already been spoken for as people are rushing to this program. And so we'd love to get that information out sooner and get as many people as we can signed up. It's a really strong resiliency plan. And it has the potential to avoid, the need for diesel backup generators at people's homes by having this technology of batteries. So we'll definitely follow up and make sure we get you some additional material that you can share widely to your constituents.
I appreciate that, and the summary of the program as well. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but currently the customer would have to front the money to pay for the battery and then eventually get a rebate or paid back through the CPUC program, the SGIP program you just described, which could take a few months, sometimes longer, to recoup that money, correct?
I'm going to admit, Supervisor, I'm not sure of that. I think we were trying to tackle that issue. That is generally the way our rebate programs work. I know, especially when we're targeting lower income customers with a program like this, that could be a potential challenge, a barrier to participating in the program. So I know we were working on that issue, but I don't know the resolution of that. So we'll have to follow up on that. It's a good call out.
Right, and I do know that the issue is being worked on, and I'm hopeful to hear very soon. I was actually hoping to hear by now already, but very soon about a sort of revolving loan to help people out to be able to afford those things. And I think that Lake County needs to take advantage. This is a great opportunity. We've been highlighted on the map for this program. So my last thing, and I'm going to put you on the spot, and I hope you don't mind, but we just experienced the rolling blackouts. And to me, the difference between a rolling blackout and PSPS, maybe it's a slight nuance difference, but it's still shutting off our power and turning it back on. And the turning back on of the power seemed to take a different pathway than the PSPS turning it back on, where it seemed to me, and I could be wrong, that there was no line inspection that was necessary to be done prior to turning it back on. But in our scenario, we had power that was shut down for certain areas because of lightning storms and because of power being turned off through natural issues rather than shut down by PG&E, but yet power was turned back on without the inspection process. So I'm trying to figure out what the difference is and if there will be a decreased time in turning our power back on. Maybe you've learned something new to be able to understand where your lines might have problems, just kind of trying to understand the difference, and also if we're going to look at a shorter time frame to turn the power back on.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I'm going to answer your question, Supervisor, and then I'll see if Jason Regan wants to add any detail, as he was the Deputy Incident Commander over the capacity event. That's a very different event than PSPS. And I think the primary difference is, the customer experience may be similar, the loss of power. But for us as operators, it's a different event. In PSPS, we're really worried about damage to the system from the high wind conditions and not knowing what potentially happened to that infrastructure while it was turned off for, frankly, long periods of time. In the capacity event where we had the rolling blackouts, the intent was to turn off the customers for about an hour. We recognize it takes a little bit longer for the power to come back on. And so customers experience as much as, 3 or so hours of outage as we sequence back on that power. But when it's off for that very short duration and we're not experiencing weather in the area at that time, we're not as concerned about the power coming back on and potential damage to our system. So our turn back on strategy, if you will, is very similar to what we do in winter storms, where we will find damage on a line and then we will turn back on that line. Once we fix that damage, if the line trips out again, then we continue to patrol and we find any additional damage on that circuit. But you're not facing the same fire risk on the ground, and so or the potential damage on our system. And that's why there's a very different kind of operating protocol around what needs to be done before it's safe to energize. Really with PSPS, the concern is the power's been off for an extended duration and there's been high wind in the area and there might be trees or branches in our wires. And that's really what we're looking to patrol for, as opposed to this, where it was really, the whole state didn't have quite enough juice, frankly, to operate the grid. And so that's why we were doing these short duration outages to sort of balance load and supply and demand on the system. I hope that helps. And Jason, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that explanation.
I just recognize the supervisor's comment. You also mentioned a lightning storm. So this last heat event, lightning storm and capacity shortfall was just another indicator that 2020 is a challenge for all of us. And there were electrical damages that were seen and repaired due to lightning impacts. There were capacity shortfalls with the rotating outages, and frankly, there were wildfire damages, maybe not so much in Lake County, but in other areas that did pose us and our restoration efforts to think through this. Aaron said it well. It's the high winds that lead to catastrophic wildfire and growth of those wildfires. I will say that as we repaired in lightning events, we do take public safety seriously, and we do inspect a section of damage line where we have it cleared or grounded for our crews before re-energizing, making sure that we've identified all the damage locations. But Supervisor, it's a good question, but I think Aaron said it pretty directly, that from a public safety power shutoff, it's a different posture relative to emergency response or really relative to capacity shortfall. But bottom line, at the end of the day, what I'm hearing from you is, are you sure that you're acting safely? And I have high confidence in the men and women that are, based on the incident that comes our way. And I respect the question and the bit of challenge that you had. And being an operator, past operator, and a current leader of men and women in our control centers and those in this field, it is something that we do recognize and we do treat on each case before energizing, that we're ensuring we're not posing a new hazard. But there is a pretty significant difference on the risk level when it comes to PSPS and the requirement we have in our standards to patrol every single section of the circuit. I hope that at least in fairness talks a little bit to your ask there.
Hey, it gives me an answer. It sure does. Thank you very much.
Okay, any more questions from the board at this point for PG&E? Supervisor Scott? Go ahead, Supervisor Scott.
Sorry.
Okay.
Just like to thank PG&E for this update. You can definitely see they have done some great work this last year to make sure that Lake County will be safer because of fires. They've done a great job trimming the trees and making sure that we will have power on if we do have a PSPS event. I don't have any questions, but I would just like to make sure the community is aware that they're looking at these maps and they can see that, well, I'm in the map, I'm gonna have electricity, so I don't have to make sure that I'm prepared. I just wanna make sure our community is aware that we don't know what's going to happen with the next PSPS events. You may or may not, even if you are in those mapping areas, correct, that you may still lose power. So we still, as a community, need to make sure that we are prepared regardless of where we sit on those maps, right? Because we could be on those maps saying that we will have power, but it comes down to it, the event is more severe, you don't have power. So I just want to make sure our community is aware that PG&E has done some great work. We're in a much better place now than we were a year ago, but we still need to make sure we are prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Scott. I will, my comment will be following up on that, as Supervisor Scott was said, obviously communication is going to be key throughout this event. As Supervisor Scott said, people are going to read the maps and get an assumption, and we don't want to let our guard down. As she said, be prepared. But it'll also be very important as we go through these events this season that there's good communication from PG&E to get the information out to the customers as efficiently as possible. And making sure everybody understands the exact situation we're going through. I know it's going to be easier with the weather stations, it seems like, of the 23 that have been installed will help those decisions being made, but really just want to emphasize the communication part for these events as they come up, that we can get them out to the public through PG&E, and just making sure we're concentrating on that and improving on it this year.
Supervisor Simon, if this is Aaron, if I could speak to that briefly. One improvement that we didn't discuss here that I think will help your constituency a lot this year that we got based on feedback was the text messages, the emails, the auto calls that go out to give the additional indications about the events this year. Last year were very general. We may shut off the power. This year they will be very specific. They will have information that will both confirm your address, that we're intending to contact, as well as let you know when we expect to turn the power off and when we expect to turn the power back on. So those will be estimates. They may not end up being perfect, but we certainly received a lot of feedback that a much better communication and more specific communication would be really welcome to help folks with their planning. And so all our communications are teed up to be a lot more specific this year to provide that level of detail. Again, it will be challenging to hit those on the exact button, given that we're dealing with weather here and field operations, but we really want to do a much better job of setting expectations for the public about what they're going to experience.
Thank you, Aaron. Supervisor Crandall?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. Thank you also for I like seeing Lucerne and Clear Lake Oaks, having different, potential areas. Just wanted to see how far out, and you may have said it, but just in case someone that's listening is wondering, how far out some areas for, the Upper Lake area, the Elk Mountain area, which is a high-risk area, especially during the Mendocino Complex fire. Elk Mountain took some damage, and also the Spring Valley area. How far those areas will be covered in the future? I know that you've done a tremendous job as it is right now, And so I understand that it takes a lot more, but I just wanted to get that answered so that maybe the constituency that's watching.
John, can you lead in a little bit on that one? I know you're closer to it, and if not, I apologize. I'll have to follow up a little bit more on and get some of that information. But John, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. And, you know, the short answer there is we did look at the Upper Lake area and we looked at the Spring Valley area, and they were technically challenging. I will say that. And for future years, we are just now evaluating what possibilities exist for 2021 and what kind of work would need to be done in those areas to make those technically feasible. So Upper Lake is on our radar screen. We are paying attention to it, and we'll just have to see how, as we go through our analysis on the technical feasibility and the work that needs to be done there, we'll be able to communicate that more thoroughly as we proceed. Our focus is very near term. Our focus is to make sure that we support what we've committed to for this year, and then we're moving into future years of evaluation for other areas.
And I would add, as I apologize, I'm tracking a little bit better to the ask here now, is that, you know, we're welcome to any feedback, local information, partnering with all of you, or our community or county members or city representatives. So, you know, the terrain is really the challenge for us here. We know the winds are going to come, and environmentally our state is challenged, but it's really about making sure that where we do support alternative power solutions, either through keeping the grid energized safely or in microgrids, we got to really respect the risk and the threat that comes along with doing so. So, you know, I would welcome any further conversations or really just continuation of learning based on feedback, and we'll look forward to work on it. But to John's point, some of that terrain area has been a bit challenging for us this year, and frankly, we've rolled our sleeves up and done a lot of work to be better this year, but doesn't mean that we don't have opportunity to continue to grow in future years. So I appreciate the question there.
Thank you. And I'll follow up too with some potential areas for the Blue Lakes area, which usually doesn't have a resource center, and it's pretty far for them to drive to the middle school. And then I'll follow up also possibly with the Spring Valley area. They may need one in the future, but we have, of course, can do some further work on that. Thank you.
All right, any other comments from the board? If not, we're going to go ahead and open this thing up for public. Supervisor Sabatier?
I mean, it's a silly question, but I just want to ask, do you have any potential PSPS insights? I know you have a 2-week weather pattern that you look at or anything like that. I haven't heard of anything, just thought I'd ask it.
Yeah, Aaron, you want me to jump in here a little bit? So,
Sure.
Currently, an incident commander for the wildfire events, we monitor and work with the National Weather Service. Nothing significant on our horizon for the next 7 days. 7 days is really where we have the best information. We do have a 2-week model that can flux a bit and sometimes send us into a little bit of an unknown territory. What I will say is there's a significant high pressure and heat event coming next week as early as Sunday evening into Monday, or as late as Monday afternoon. Relative, though, to those southerly offshore winds, we're not seeing that in the models that we use or we have vendors with, and we're not hearing it from the National Weather Service. But it will be hot, and welcome to September, and we recognize that we're all on our guard here. That's why we've got our emergency center open. So, Supervisor, I appreciate the question. Right now, nothing in the forecast relative to that risk, and I'd like to help keep it that way. But we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, greatly appreciate everything. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to open this up to the public. But I do have one final comment, just as Supervisor Sabatier noticed. It says December in Middletown. If there's any opportunity to push that a little sooner, greatly appreciate it. But I take that with thank you for the great work that's been done in other areas. It seems like a lot of our citizens will have an opportunity if weather cooperates in that. So, we're going to go ahead and close it up here from the board level, and we're going to open it up to the public for questions. And please, it looks like we already have in the Zoom room, we have one hand up, and it's Jessica Peister. Jake, can you get that going?
Yes, I've sent a mute request to her. Will you please confirm your first and last name?
Yes, Jessica Paiska.
Great, thank you. We could hear you.
Wonderful. So yes, Jessica Paiska, I serve on the Cobb Area Council, which is in the Cobb area, which is in the Tier 3 level. First, I want to say how much I appreciate the work to get the Little Red Schoolhouse moving along towards being a community resource center. I think that's really important, and I hope we can get that all negotiated. I have two other questions. I'll just ask them both at the same time, and then you can answer when you'd like. The hardening of the line has been a great project this summer. I'm really impressed to see the improvement. I do have a question about the new larger wooden poles versus the composite poles that have been installed, and how those composite poles are chosen in which location. It seems to be pretty random, and I've had conversations with the contractors about that. So I just want a little bit more information on that. And then with the SGIP program, is there any way that we could be more aggressive with the implementation in the Tier 3 areas, particularly this year with distance learning? And is there a plan to get Cobb School backup generation? I know that's one of the only schools that wouldn't have that with the microgrids. And I just wanted to let you know, on the PG&E website for SGIP for our area, it does say oversubscribed. I have left messages and have not gotten a call back. This is a really important program for so many of our residents, so I am happy to help facilitate getting more information to the Cobb area residents through the Cobb Area Council, but I think it's important for all the other Tier 3 areas in the county. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm not sure who can, go ahead, Aaron.
I'll go ahead and take a couple of those. Specifically, I think, as John mentioned, we're beginning the planning for 2021 and where there is the potential for additional microgrid work. And so that will certainly be another area that we can put in our planning hopper here as we think about that. And we look forward to some ongoing communications. You know, as the team mentioned, we're hustling right now to put the finishing touches on the work for this year, but also have teams turning and looking to the planning for 2021 as well. You know, I'm not able to speak to the specific locations of where we're choosing composite poles versus the wood poles. You know, both are in our standard for additional hardened assets, but we can certainly follow up with more information. Jason may have some insight on that. But you know, I certainly can't speak to that specific project, but I don't know, Jason, if you can talk about the different criteria at all.
Yeah, I think how I'd answer it is I'd welcome any further conversation, and we can work directly with the person asking the question if needed and get the right representative or back to this council here. Our hardening efforts are planned about a year in advance. We recognize that over this year we've learned a lot in our ability to push hardening in the different communities in the right areas. Frankly, both internally from feedback from employees, our vendors, and also just the program leaders that run it. So we are evolving. I'm not sure exactly what may or may not have been communicated or some of the questions, but I think frankly what I'm hearing from you is why are we choosing the locations we are, and can I understand a little bit more on the intent of the hardening, whether it's pole replacements, whether it's pole wraps, whether it's wire covering, whether it's working from the substation out. We'll recognize that we did have some targeted areas that we've gone back to and looked at and said, you know, if in order to truly harden that, we've got to start at the substation out and not necessarily in the actual just Tier 2 and Tier 3 areas. It's one thing to harden a facility, but if I don't have a source to it, then, you know, frankly, just a hardening provide the value that we were intended. And with any large program like this, as we evolve, we're learning from it. So frankly, I appreciate your comment. It's in line with some internal feedback we've gotten from the crew, the men and women that are doing the work, and also some observations from our regulators and others. So I'm not sure how the best follow-up would be for it, but acknowledging that we are continuing to evolve in this hardening area.
So Jessica, I think I'm going to ask Melinda, and we'll circle up because we have a few follow-up items here, and make sure that she follows up with you so that we can get you both information on specifically what poles were chosen in that area and what the criteria we're looking at to help you have better insight there, as well as the other question that I hadn't addressed yet, which is the oversubscription issue on SGIP, and see what we can do there. So we'll follow up, have Melinda follow up with you on both of those items. I don't know if you can throw an email address in the chat or something of that line, but we'll certainly, I'm sure you have that, we have that, and we can contact you.
Okay, Jake, I don't see any other hands up. Can we open the room here and see if anyone has a comment?
Yes, I will open up the room.
Any questions?
Sent a unmute request to the Zoom room here. If you would like to make a comment, please start by stating your first and last name.
Hello, I'd like to make a comment.
Hi, yes.
Hello, my name is Carol Cole-Lewis of Upper Lake, California. First of all, thank you so much, PG&E, for the work, Aaron, for the work that you've done to actually help create some resiliency here in Lake County. A statement, I am an independent solar consultant, and I've spent a lot of time understanding the SGIP program. So if any of the supervisors have constituents that are interested in getting solar plus battery systems, I can educate them about the program and can possibly help. I'm at upstartenergy.com. So it's a really important program, and not enough people are taking advantage of that equity resiliency budget line. And there is still quite a significant amount of money left in that budget line. It's the general budget line that's oversubscribed. But everybody else should be taking advantage of that, especially our lower income people. I didn't realize the CARE program was eligible. I thought it was just, anyway. So I'm here if you need help. And I have some education on my website too.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else in the room? Any of our directors, anybody? If you have any questions, go ahead and please pose them now. Okay. All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the room, and we'll bring it back to the chambers.
We do have a comment here in the chamber.
John Moss, I'd like to know how this is going to operate in relation to screening for the COVID virus. I don't quite understand the whole concept, but I was at a resource center at the last PSPS, and there are quite a few people plugging in their cell phones and talking, etc. Thank you.
So if I can address that question, this is Aaron Johnson with PG&E. We are looking to basically follow the protocols that Lake County will give us when and if we need to open a community resource center. So some of the advanced preparations we've made is, obviously we're moving to all these indoor sites. There's going to be metering of people in and out and required mask wearing. If the county determines that that's not safe to operate, we will open exclusively outdoor sites, which would be more of a kind of an open area, kind of a drive-through model, if you will, similar to what's been done kind of with the COVID testing facilities. That was some of our model. The idea here is you'd get a bag of snacks, water, a small charging device that would help with phone charging. There would be on-site charging for larger medical devices, but we wouldn't have a whole bunch of charging set up for phones and those kind of smaller devices, just because of the social distancing requirements around that. So those are a couple of the different models that we're looking at for. We will, on indoor facilities, we'll be taking temperature before you go in. There's plexiglass shields up for the people that are admitting folks. All of our folks will obviously be wearing masks. We will have extra masks we ask people to come with masks, but we will have some extra masks on site as well for those who don't have one. So we're trying to follow all of the very similar COVID protocols and safety practices that we're seeing throughout different parts of our life right now. And again, the bottom line is, as we open these facilities, we're going to take our lead from Lake County and whatever requirements you would have in the county and follow those. And so we'll take our lead there. So hopefully that helps a little bit, ma'am, understand how we'll be thinking about COVID as we try and safely open community resource centers.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, do we have any other comment in the chambers? Public comment?
No other
Questions?
comments.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. We're going to go ahead and close public comment at this point on this item. We're going to bring it back to the board for any final comments from Board of Supervisors.
I'm good. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay. Yeah, the same here. Thank you very much for hearing Lake County PG&E. I know we got a lot of work to do as we move through this, and I know you guys are really concentrating on it. So we really appreciate the focus on Lake County. It is, obviously always can be improved, and we'll team together and work on that as we go through this process. But compared to last year to this year, I just want to say thank you very much for hearing us. We're always advocating for our constituents. And I want to thank you for PG&E stepping up to the challenge that is PSPS at this point. So thank you.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for the partnership on all the land sites, the CRC locations. We couldn't have made the progress we've made this year without that partnership. So thank you very much. We appreciate the support of all your staff.
One final comment too, as the LNU fire and complex is moving through, I know that you guys did have boots on the ground protecting your assets. Protecting your assets is part of protecting our community also. I know that you guys saw PG&E fire trucks, fire crews out there protecting your assets. But like I said, once again, it's coordination and collaboration of protecting our community. Also saw cats on the ground cutting for high tension lines and other stuff like that. So just want to thank you in the last event that we just had also from the PG&E standpoint. So.
Thank you, and it's a partnership, and just to make clear that, when we're out doing all that work, we're doing it with clearance from the agency that has jurisdiction. We're not going to go off and, it's got to be a coordinated effort. And so while we have built up those capabilities over the last couple of years, we make it very clear to all our folks on the ground that, we've got to follow the incident command protocols and be a part of that larger incident effort. And so, but thank you for noticing the work, and we are certainly trying to be a part of that solution to those really challenging, these fires have just, it's really been something else, right? And so trying to help get power restored as quickly as possible. And that's why our EOC is still open, so we can get, restoration done in the areas that have been affected as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you. All right, if there are no more comments from the board, we'll go ahead and close this item. I want to thank you, PG&E, and everyone that's on from the community. So, and we will work to get that information out that has been provided today. It will be on the website as part of the package. And please, PG&E, if you could work with Melinda and make sure we're getting this information out to our community, we greatly appreciate it.